Good morning, guys. I hope you had a great spring break. I hope it was relaxing and you're ready to get into our first unit of distance learning. So this is week 1, lesson 1. Our unit 1 is going to be about heroes. So for your do now for today, on a separate piece of paper, I want you to answer these questions. Number 1, think of someone in your life. Could be a family member or an athlete, a movie star, anyone, etc. Who is a hero. And I want you to write down their name. So number 1 is just their name. Number 2, what makes this person a hero? What about them is heroic? And number 3, why do they act heroically? You could see into their head, why do you think that they would act heroically? I want you to pause this video and I want you to answer these questions. All right, hopefully you've answered all of those questions and you're ready to get into the lesson. So our text for today is going to be called If We Must Die by Claude McKay. You might remember back to our poetry unit, we actually read this poem. We didn't spend too much time on it, but it might seem a little familiar to you, and that's why. So the background knowledge you need to know in order to understand this poem better. First, McKay wanted to show the ways African Americans were mistreated in America. That was his goal. He wrote If We Must Die about the bloody summer of 1919. Which is when anti-Black groups killed hundreds of people across the country. There were 2 different arguments about what Black people should do during this time. How should Black people respond to these anti-Black killings? One side said Black people should rally against these anti-Black groups peacefully. They should stand up to them, but they should not have violence. The other side said you should use physical violence as self-defense. You're not initiating this, you're just defending yourself. And these were the 2 different sides. So we're going to watch this short video about the Bloody Summer, and I want you to think of one word that describes the Black experience during this time, and I want you to write that down underneath your do now on that separate piece of paper you had out. So go ahead and turn your attention to the screen as we watch this video.
Mrs. Moore has fond memories of her youth. But that was not always the reality for Negroes in Omaha or the nation as a whole. The end of World War I brought on a lot of change. The enlisted men were returning home. Government spending on arms was winding down. Competition for work became fierce. For the first time, whites had to compete with blacks for jobs. Whites turned their anger and frustration on Black neighborhoods, spreading terror and fear nationwide. Many were killed. The year was 1919, and it was the bloodiest summer ever between the races. Omaha was not spared its measure of violence. That September, a white woman, Agnes Lobeck, accused a Black packing house worker, Will Brown, of rape. He was arrested, held and questioned by police in the Douglas County Jail. Out on the street, a mob of angry men demanded Brown be handed over to them. The police refused. The mob then set fire to the jail. As officers battled the flames, the mob stormed in and dragged Brown out to the street below. By now, the mob had grown to several thousand. Omaha Mayor Ed Smith tried to stop them, but the vigilantes turned their rage on him. The mayor narrowly escaped being lynched and was cut down in time to save his life. Brown was not so lucky. He was shot hundreds of times. Then his body was hung from a light pole. The body was dragged through the streets of downtown Omaha. Finally, it was torched and burned. By morning, the city was placed under martial law. Troops were posted along the streets to prevent further outbreaks of violence. The riot was confined to the courthouse and parts of downtown. However, its impact extended deep into the Black community. And I remember the humiliation. I remember that I was ashamed. I can remember the fear among the people of the North, and it was a fear for all of us. There wasn't too many of the black children in high school at that time, so for a couple of days, most of us stayed away. We were very ashamed, very ashamed. Why were you ashamed? Well, when you're 14, when things like that kind of shock you, and you can't believe that they can do anything, and then it kind of strikes you for maybe the first time that because your color, that kind of does something to you. That kind of does something to you. It always did, and it always has, and still does.
Okay, so obviously some deeper themes there, some things that may be graphic to us. So now that we have some context, I'm going to remind you how to use Common Lit. While you read, I want you to highlight every time the author mentions death or dying. Now, some of you have let me know that your iPad isn't letting you annotate. So if that's the case, what you're going to do is you're going to write down every time the author mentions death or dying on that separate piece of paper that you wrote your do now on. So you're either writing it down on the separate piece of paper or you're annotating straight onto Common Lit. If you can't annotate on Common Lit, don't worry about it, just do it on that separate piece of paper. Okay, so we're gonna go over to Common Lit here. It's gonna show you this background knowledge that we kind of just went over. It says Claude McKay was a Jamaican-American writer, poet, and seminal figure during the Harlem Renaissance. McKay dedicated his life to fighting for the rights of oppressed people. If We Must Die reflects McKay's perspective on Black people's experiences in America during the early 20th century. As you read, highlight every time the speaker talks about death or dying. Got it. So again, this is in guided reading mode, and it's only going to show you a little bit of the poem as you go. The first one says, if we must die, let it not be like hogs, hunted and penned in an inglorious spot. Now I'm going to see, what does this word inglorious mean? Causing shame, loss of honor. Okay. While round us bark the mad and hungry dogs, making their mock at our accursed lot. So I'm going to pause here because it already mentions death. So I'm going to highlight this. And I'm just going to remind myself that it's going to talk about death here. While round us bark the mad and hungry dogs, making their mock at our accursed lot. If we must die, it's going to say death again. My computer doesn't like to let me highlight. There we go. Oh, I'm just going to remind myself because my computer's being weird. Oh, let us nobly die, so that our precious blood may not be shed in vain. Then even the monsters we defy shall be constrained to honor us through the dead. Now, something that's I'm not going to require you to do, but you might want to do is maybe make a gist note here. So I'm going to say, like, what is this really saying to me? Maybe if we have to die, can we not die like animals being chased by dogs who are making fun of us? And the reason I got that is because it says let it not be like hogs, which are like pigs. So let it not be like animals who are being chased by these mad and hungry dogs. And when they say making their mock at us, that's basically like making fun of us. So if we're gonna die, I don't want to die like animals who are being chased by dogs, right? I want to stand up to those people. So I'm going to say done. And now this little gist note will stay right here as I read, and I'll also be able to see it when I'm grading. Again, if your iPad doesn't let you make notes, it's totally fine. You can just write them down on your separate piece of paper. So then you're going to keep reading here. We got to question 1. Your question 1 is going to come over here. Which of the following phrases best describes the speaker of the poem's attitude towards death? You're going to answer that. Remember, think about it really carefully before you answer because it's going to mark you down in points each time you get it wrong. And then once you answer it correctly, you'll be able to keep going. Now, for the short answer question at the end of the text after you finish reading, some of you did not give us as much as we wanted you to give us for last week's assignment. So what we're really looking for is basically those short answer questions are asking you to do a CER. It wants you to answer the question, provide evidence, and then give us that good reasoning. So it shouldn't be just one sentence. It should be at least 3 sentences. And I want you to really think, what is this question asking you to do? Just because it's online doesn't mean we're requiring less work of you. We still want to see that you guys can answer these questions thoughtfully, just like any exit ticket would be, any CER in any of our classes when we're actually in class, okay? All right, so we go back to this PowerPoint. The last thing is going to be this class discussion. After you have finished the text and questions, make sure you respond to the discussion question in Google Classroom under classwork. So it's not posted there. Actually, it should be posted there by the time you see this. And you're going to go to classwork and you're going to make sure that you answer that discussion question. It's really important that you do this. This is also part of your grade. So Common Lit and class discussion. All right. I hope you guys have fun reading this. A little heavier than our last one, but I think you guys are going to do great. Let me know if you have any questions. Bye.